Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the #1 resource for actors and talent seekers. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, and I'm here to guide you through every aspect of the entertainment industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. These intimate, inspirational conversations with today's most award-worthy film, television, and theater artists provide you, dear listener, advice on how to live the creative life, personal stories of success and failure alike, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
Everyone's got their process. No one should apologize for it. People should explore and experiment. You're artists. Be bold, be brave, break some shit, and never ever apologize for it. Show up, be kind, be respectful, be there for your partners.
Listeners, In the Envelope listeners, welcome to another extra special episode of this Actorly podcast. Listen, Jared Leto joins us on the podcast today, and this in many ways was sort of a dream backstagey interview. Just to give you a little sneak peek of how the production process works for this podcast, I do this thing where I transcribe the entire interview and then proceed to go through and highlight the sections or the quotes from the interview that are relevant to Backstage readers, that might be of interest to early career actors, mid-career actors, late career actors, artists of all types. I mean, Jared Leto is also a musician and a director and a filmmaker and a visual artist, but I can always tell when an interview is a really good one when practically half of the transcript is highlighted. And that was the case here with Jared, who is sort of the dream in terms of talking about acting techniques and crafts and the many different ways that he attempts to create and get into and remain in character. We talked a lot about his work as Paolo Gucci in Ridley Scott's House of Gucci, which has just received the Cast Ensemble nomination at the Screen Actors Guild Awards. Jared was also individually nominated. It was a great way to get into his personal techniques, but also kind of his advice for all working artists or working actors. I love what he said about prosthetics, because he wore a lot of prosthetics as Paolo Gucci. If you've seen the posters or if you've seen the film, he's practically unrecognizable. But as he points out here, it's not the prosthetics that make the character. We talked about outside in versus inside out, but it's more like you just need to know your character inside and out. You need to know their backstory. You need to be able to know them down to the bone so that you can improvise and ad-lib in the moment. That's what apparently a lot of this movie came from. And you can't base the character chiefly on the prosthetics. It's better to have no prosthetics at all, is what he said, which I thought was really interesting. He's also starring in the upcoming We Crashed, which is the Apple TV miniseries about WeWork, and Morbius, which is Marvel and Sony's next big supernatural superhero film. And so it's a really exciting time to talk to Jared. Happy birthday, Jared. He recently turned 50, which you would not know it. But otherwise, over at Backstage, we are in full swing with award season. The Directors Guild, Writers Guild, and Producers Guild have all announced their film nominations. That's the day of this podcast release, the 27th. But the Cinema Audio Society Awards have also announced their nominations. And next week, we will hear from BAFTA, their British Film Academy Award nominations. So it's really a race that's coming together. And in the meantime, I'm so thrilled to continue to talk to all of the many contenders up for these awards, including Jared. I can't thank him enough for joining us. This was such a great interview. Without further ado, let's take a quick break and then get to Academy Award winner, Jared Leto. For your awards consideration, The White Lotus, the HBO original series nominated for 2 SAG Awards for performances by Murray Bartlett and Jennifer Coolidge. A sharp social satire following the exploits of hotel guests and employees at an exclusive Hawaiian resort over the span of one highly transformative week, The White Lotus is praised as a finely honed, breathtaking bit of acting. Don't miss what critics call beautiful and unforgettable performances by Bartlett and Coolidge. The White Lotus is now streaming on HBO Max. Jared Leto is an Academy Award-winning actor well known for his transformative and, as he calls them, immersive screen performances. The musician, filmmaker, and actor broke into Hollywood with My So-Called Life, going on to star in Prefontaine, Requiem for a Dream, Panic Room, Dallas Buyers Club, and Suicide Squad as the Joker. He'll next star in the supernatural superhero film Morbius, and as Adam Newman in Apple's We Crashed, and is currently Critics' Choice and Screen Actors Guild Award nominated for his Paolo Gucci in Ridley Scott's House of Gucci. Here is the incredible Jared Leto. Thank you so much for taking the time. How are you? Congratulations on all your many accolades right now.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the time today. I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah. You've spoken to Backstage before, and as you know, we are all about the craft and career advice. We're all about your deepest, darkest acting secrets, and I know that you love talking about that. So I think listeners are going to get a lot out of hearing about your process.
Well, I certainly hope so. If not, I will give them their money back. Money back guarantee.
Right. Well, so again, congratulations on House of Gucci and all of these many. It's the SAG nomination. I'm going to ask you about ensemble acting. Spoiler alert. But talk to me about House of Gucci. I just read that you were sent the script for another role and were instead connected with Paolo, but you didn't know anything about what he looked like or sounded like. Is that true?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I think that's a kind of probably a really healthy way to approach projects is to keep an open mind. I mean, a lot of times people don't know what you're looking to do. A lot of times you don't know what you're looking to do. And, being surprised is always really exciting because it means that you connected, that there's a spark somewhere. But when I read the script, it was to look at a different part. And then something about Paolo just jumped off the page for me. I immediately responded and connected with the character. I didn't know what he looked like, but I really identified with his desire to be an artist, is the fact that he wanted to do something special with his life and to share that with people, and that he hoped to do something special with his life, and I related a lot to his failures, I think, which is very common for us artists. And I loved his heart and humor, and I saw that there was a clear opportunity to really build on those, both his heart and his humor. There were indications of that in the script, but it wasn't really what it became. So oftentimes, if there's room for things to grow, if you see that opportunity, it means probably you're walking down the right path.
This is super cool to hear. I wanted to maybe ask about drama versus comedy and how you approach both, and in the context of Paolo. But I love how you just said it's heart and humor. I mean, is it safe to say every character has both of those things, and that's a way into playing them?
For sure. I mean, in the case of Paolo, it could have been played a different way. Could have been played almost like the villain in a way, a bit two-dimensional, or one of the antagonists of the script. But instead, I really pushed on his desire to be heard by the people that were closest to him, the people that loved him the most, were the people that supported him the least. There was a lot of conflict, a lot of trauma in that family. And, I thought it was a really interesting character and family to explore. And, for the people that have seen the film out there, it's probably easy to understand that I fell in love with the opportunity, and I fell in love with the character. And, but humor versus, comedy versus drama, I mean, I think it all comes from the same place. As I've gotten older, I always look for opportunities for humor. It's something I spend a great deal of time with. I mean, even when I did Little Things, to me was quite, I found the guy quite funny. He's had a bizarre sense of humor, talking about like tacos and, potato skins or something. I don't know. There was all kinds of wild things that were coming out of my mouth. And I usually find that the improv is where the humor is, and vice versa. And on this project with House of Gucci, there was a lot of improvisation, a lot of ad-libbing. And yeah, I really enjoy that. I enjoy, I think, when you're younger, and I've always loved, when I used to go to the video store, I go to the drama section, and I've always appreciated that. But as I've gotten older, I've been attracted to comedy and finding that in some of the most challenging moments, the most heartbreaking moments. I think there's always an opportunity for humor. Life is like that,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and when you say comedy, when you're talking about it in this way, to clarify, like, you are imbuing these characters with a sense of humor. However, you're also thinking about comedy in the sense of like, what is going to be funny to an audience? Like, are you thinking about the laugh? Are you thinking about how this is going to appear comedically?
No, I think it's what tickles me, to sound like an old grandpa, but that my grandma would always, oh, that tickles me. But, to find what tickles me, and I have a, it's pretty dry sense of humor as well. But I love, Paolo could be so sincere about something, but it could be quite funny as well. And
yeah,
the physical humor is also something that I explored a lot with Paolo. Just the way he moves sometimes, the way he would look sometimes, it could be quite funny. I remember, like, I would look at Ridley, and this shows you how attentive he is. We'd be at a scene, or we'd be talking, or he'd be talking to someone, and I would just look at him, and he'd be watching me. He would just start breaking out laughing.
Oh, wow.
Because, Paolo is a very inquisitive guy. He's a curious person. He's mischievous. He's got that impish kind of spirit. And yeah, he's a lot of fun to spend time with, and I absolutely adored this experience.
Of course. Well, and you mentioned physicality, and of course I needed to ask you about this. There's prosthetics and costuming and makeup, but then there's also, as you say, physicality of the walk, the accent. I got to ask you about accents. How much of the ratio of the performance, like what percentage do each of those contribute, I guess, in this case?
I mean, it's everything. I'm when I take on a role, I'm obsessed. I want to know everything. And I want to know, what my character's favorite food is. I want to know, the last time he took a shower. I want to know, is he right hand? Is he left hand? What's his middle name? Tell me your sign. When were you born? What was your favorite television show? I love to investigate all of it. I want to know, how many fillings the guy has. Yeah. I want to know everything. Because you never know when it's going to pay off. And a lot of that stuff in moments of improvisation or ad lib is really, it's a beautiful thing to understand so much, to have that information. How and where you use it could be a bit obtuse or elusive, to kind of track down exactly where it paid off, but it certainly does. And, I know wonderful actors that really don't spend that much time doing that kind of work, but I really enjoy it. For me, it's an important part of the process, the who, what, where, when, why, how, all of that stuff, and building character. And for me, once you have character, you're free, and that's a beautiful place to be.
Right. So it's both a bunch of preparation, and it sounds like backstory, which often you're inventing, right?
Yeah.
But then there in the moment,
as far as transformation goes, just, it doesn't matter. Like prosthetics, it's pointless. It's just rubber if you don't do the work, if you don't have the heart, the soul, and the spirit. It's meaningless. You're better off getting the heart, soul, and spirit and don't do the physical part of it than you are to do the physical part and then not have the other half that's needed. But I enjoy immersive work. I mean, I think it's no secret that I'm passionate about that. And, I've always been fascinated by that. And, I feel really fortunate that I have the opportunity to work that way so often, or just work that way, period.
Yeah. I mean, is it safe to call it an outside-in approach? But as you say, the emphasis, the in is really important.
I make music as well. I'm in a band called 30 Seconds to Mars. And, I was just talking about this yesterday. When I write lyrics, I often am writing them while I'm singing. I don't sit down and write lyrics and then sing them. Some people do it that way.
Oh, okay.
I think Bob Dylan did it that way. Maybe he did a little bit of both. But And some people sit down and type out kind of poems and then they sing them. And but I always kind of sing, and the shape and the vowel sounds and the lyrics kind of start to come, and then they make, there's something that happens, a direction, and you follow that. I discover by doing. And I think that it's the same for me with acting. I wouldn't call it outside in, because sometimes there are certain things, like as soon as you read something, you're on the inside. Like when I read House of Gucci, you're starting on the inside because it's your imagination. Something grabs a hold of your heart. So yeah, it's a little bit of both, but you can do things on the outside that, and this is a bit of a cliche to talk about, but you can give someone 5 different pairs of shoes and it makes them walk 5 different ways.
Yeah.
You put a big steel-toed combat boot on versus a high heel, you're going to walk differently.
Yeah.
Character's going to be different. If you have one nice pair of shoes and you never want to get them dirty, maybe you're going to walk a little different. There are a lot of things like that come into play, and that maybe that's a little bit of the outside and.
For sure. And how much of this is affected by
to go back to it, the reason, it's all connected, because if you do have that one pair of shoes and you don't want to get them dirty, that of course is about the inside as well, because it's about the circumstances, the history of the character. Yeah. So it goes both ways.
That's what you mean about like knowing the character that well, that maybe in a moment of improv, you're able to respond like you just know them to the bone, and therefore... Yeah. And so that's where I want to ask about ensemble acting. Like here you are nominated as a SAG ensemble, which I just love this award. I love this idea of an ensemble award. How does improv work in terms of listening? What is great listening in acting? And what is chemistry?
Good questions. And just to wrap up the other thing, for me, these characters are almost like real people.
Sure.
They're like living, breathing entities to me, and I really grow quite attached to them, and kind of create for myself a deep empathy, understanding for them, and it's quite an amazing. The older I get to, I'm just always struck with that incredible and acute sense of gratitude and humility that that I get to do this. I'm very, 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 very fortunate, and I do feel like it's not only my job to show up and do the best that I can, but it's also my job to show up and be kind and collaborative and prepared, and that's really important to me. And I think that probably leads to the ensemble of it all. And in this case, it was for House of Gucci. I had the opportunity to work with legends that I adore, and new actors that I really think the world of. So yeah, it was a dream. I mean, Al Pacino, we could start there, playing my father. Just a guy that through his work taught me what acting is about. He taught me about ambition, about making strong choices, about behavior, about being bold and taking risks. And I really, got a chance to thank him for that. And he was a perfect partner in crime. Most of my scenes were with Al. And, it's just a joy to see, too, that at his age, he's in his 80s now. And, he's a humble man. There's no movie star bullshit there.
Interesting.
And he's generous, he's kind, and he's supportive. And he really, that partnership was a beautiful gift that he gave me. And his faith in me and his encouragement to, to keep pushing and do the deep dive like I do. And it was awesome to get that approval and that encouragement from him as an artist. So yeah, a beautiful experience working with him. And you were talking about listening and, what did you say? The other thing, listening and
maybe chemistry. I feel like chemistry is a little bit less
that's a good one to talk about with Al. I mean, it's probably hard not to have chemistry. When you're playing with somebody that's so experienced.
Sure.
And experience is often underrated, in my book, not overrated. but they have the ability to listen well, to respond. And, I think chemistry is a combination of being able to be there for your partner, to be interested and supportive and engaged with them. I think that's kind of chemistry as well. You can talk about some natural spark people have if you have an affection for someone, and that can be interesting. But sometimes two people just have a little bit of a spark, and there's a never-ending amount of improv. There's something happens when you look in their eyes. They really kind of see each other rather than just these blank dead stares that are furiously trying to remember their lines. They're like really there. And I've had that experience so many times where it's a beautiful thing if, you go off script or you improv and people are right there. They're not destroying the scene or trying to outdo one another, but there's this graceful kind of ebb and flow. And I certainly felt that on House of Gucci with everyone, with Lady Gaga, with Adam Driver, with Jeremy Irons, and with Al. And I improv'd a lot in every scene. I did a lot of ad libs and physical improvisation, and I found acceptance and support from the entire cast. It was a really beautiful. It was beautiful all the way around.
Well, and I think that what you just mentioned about improv is an important element in it successfully, which is like not trying to outdo, not trying to go bigger for the sake of, I don't know, hogging the spotlight or trying to one up or make it a competition, right? Like it is about how do we make this scene, how do we make this story excel?
Yeah, and I mean, it sometimes it's okay if it is competitive, because that's a great.
Okay.
That's a great thing. I mean, there are different sides of competition, right?
Sure.
There's competition for ego's sake, and there's a friendly competition. I mean, in life we compete with one another, and there's a kind of a dark side of it that has to do with greed or jealousy, and that's an ugly thing. And you can feel it very quickly on a set. I haven't felt it in a very long time, but I have certainly felt it before. More often, I find generosity and excitement, and it's dangerous when you step off the edge like that, and you fail often, but you can find beautiful moments. I think, and the broken pieces, as you're putting them back together, you find the truth, and you are compelled to the moment. That's sacred moment, that great cliche that we talk about, but you're compelled to that sacred moment. And in that moment, the truth arises and you find something miraculous. So but I do think a little bit of a competition is great, even if sometimes it's with yourself, and,
sure.
And I certainly have that. I've been taking fairly, I would say, ambitious swings, and the last 8 years or so, I'm really not interested in anything else, to be honest.
Sure.
I want to destroy things. I want to make myself reconsider what's possible with acting, to put a dent in this proverbial creative universe. And I think it's good. It's okay for us to have that ambition, leave a little, to not be shy, or as we say in acting terms, don't be polite, which I do think is a beautiful acting cliche. It gets thrown around a lot, is don't be polite. I love that. And I say to people too and I remind myself, don't ask for permission from anyone, from your director, your writer, your agent. Don't ask for permission. Go and take the swing.
Yeah.
And
it also all comes back to what you mentioned about experience. Like by living life and getting to know yourself more, you do know more of what you want. And it is about just then advocating for it.
Yeah. I just think as an artist, like, I can't name one great artist in any vertical.
Yeah.
If it was painting or music or, whether it's Miles Davis or Warhol, none of them got to where they were. None of them would have made the work that they did if they waited around and asked permission to do so, if they were polite about it.
And took big swings, took big risks, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's you will be condemned and criticized on that path, but it's an important one to walk down.
Well, and is the criticism, is that just inevitable? Is that just part of the gig?
I think so. I think that, you look at Andy Warhol's life, he was one of the most celebrated, but also one of the most criticized artists to ever walk the face of the planet. And I think that's okay. Like I said, you got to break sometimes, and it's okay to fail and to be wrong and to be bad and to miss. Yeah. I'd rather someone fail dramatically than not take a swing at all.
Me too. Yeah, that's why it's so cool to hear the very first thing you said about Paolo is that he's an artist, and then you mentioned his failures. Like, I want to ask about where your personal experience plays into these characters and how you draw from that. And the life of an artist involves risk and it involves failure, right? You also told us in an interview that you took great pride in, quote, not having a plan B in terms of pursuing a life in the arts.
Yeah, I never did. I just showed up in California with a backpack and a couple $100. And,
that's awesome.
Sleeping on the beach in Venice.
Yeah.
After a very strange experience at a hostel that I tried to rent a room in for $3 a night. I think it was $2 or $3 a night. Very, very, very bizarre experience. But yeah, it's a lot of the times we put limitations on ourselves that others don't even have for us. I do it all the time, and I fail more than anybody I've ever met in my life. But I recognize the education that comes along with that.
Sure. And when you say you fail more than anyone, it's because that's in your head. That's your perceptions of your failure.
No. I don't know. It could be a lot of people could.
You mean objectively?
But yeah, I think I am objective. I fail, not just fail, and I'm because I'm taking risks.
Yeah, and learning.
Taking risks. I rock climb, and failure is you're not climbing without failing.
Interesting.
And when you're working on a route and you're failing often, they call it projecting. Kind of an interesting term, when you think about acting, is where you're working on character or you're even shooting a film. It's like I would often, and I do this regularly, I like to do a take where we try and fail. Let's break things a bit.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can I ask about We Crashed? Because I feel like that's another example of, is there overlap between you and these characters sometimes? Like, that seems to be a show about fame and celebrity.
Well, I went from House of Gucci straight into We Crashed. And that, I think one of the biggest challenges was making sure the character didn't bleed from one to the other. Because I did an Italian accent right into an Israeli accent, and little did I know they're actually very similar in many ways when you break down the language and the sounds. Of course, they have major differences, but they have a lot of common ground in certain sounds. But I was lucky because the character was, they both had they were strong characters. They were characters in and of themselves, so that helped a lot. But again, another big swing on an immersive opportunity, and I just adored the experience. The character was and is nuanced and complicated and rich and one of a kind. And I had a lot of fun with it.
For your awards consideration, Succession, the HBO original series nominated for 5 SAG Awards, including Outstanding Performance by an Ensemble in a Drama Series. Season 3 finds Waystar Royco CEO Logan Roy in a perilous position, scrambling to secure familial, political, and financial alliances as tensions rise and a bitter corporate battle threatens to turn into a family civil war. Don't miss what critics call extraordinary performances from the finest drama ensemble on television. Succession is now streaming on HBO Max. It's so funny you mentioned the bleeding between the roles, because I wanted to ask you about leaving characters behind, like, because you have such an immersive experience with these characters and often not a lot of time between the roles, do you ever find that they stick with you, or are you reluctant to let them go?
I'm always reluctant to let them go. I mean, my
It sounds
God, I
like
work
it.
so fucking hard
Yeah.
on. It's like, and at the end of the movie, most of your time is not spent in front of the camera acting.
Yeah.
For me, the way that I work too, I get to spend a little bit more time with that character, exploring, preparing, staying really focused. And when I'm done, I think it's okay I know some people have this ability just like, oh, turn it off, I'm done, I walk away. And that's great. I respect that. But I also think it's okay if you take your time with it. There are certain, aspects of maybe someone's sense of humor, or the way that they might laugh, or the way that they walk. There are certain physical habits that you can make if you stay committed for a certain amount of time, that you can be, oh, whoops, I did that again, or I said that again, or I responded in that way. You can have maybe some melancholy if you were in a place that was, a script that was pretty dark. I remember after Requiem for a Dream, it was like, holy guacamole, it needed to cleanse the mind and spirit after that one. And that's okay. There's no crime about that. And the other thing I want to say, because I know as actors looking at this, like, everyone's going to have their process. Everyone's going to have their method. I don't use that term because it's been perverted by people who don't understand it.
Sure.
And just misconstrued and misunderstood. It's misunderstood. So I just stay away from it. I love immersive acting. I love character. I'm excited by it. I'm enthralled. I'm curious. I'm eternally fascinated. Everyone's got their process. No one should apologize for it. People should explore and experiment. You're artists. Be bold, be brave, break some shit, and never, ever apologize for it. Show up, be kind, be respectful, be there for your partners, be there for your director, but don't be afraid to really challenge even your own expectations of what's possible.
Yeah, that was pure gold. Yeah. And I think it's also a process of, I'm guessing you're not, I mean, you mentioned there are things that you do every time, but it sounds like for every role, you are looking for the opportunity to reinvent not just yourself, but reinvent the process of creating a character, right?
Absolutely. Because what worked for one won't work for another.
Yeah.
And, you never know what's going to be the key that unlocks the door. Sometimes there's many doors, many keys. But yeah, absolutely. And it's important to remember that. But want to keep evolving.
What happens when it's not working? Or when you have done all the work of the character, or just you just feel like something's not clicking? I mean, maybe this hasn't happened to you in recent years, but especially for actors at the beginning of their career, maybe they're working with material that's not as sensitively constructed.
Well,
for the
I
character.
think the most common reason things aren't working is when people aren't prepared.
Okay, sure.
Your nerves take over. You don't know your words. You don't know character. You don't have an understanding of the circumstances. You haven't done your research. You haven't done your work. You could also be exhausted. So you got to get sleep. You take care of yourself. You got to, make sure that you're not starving and, or that you don't have things that are interfering with your work. So you check all of those boxes first.
That's great advice.
I have a moment on We Crash where I was like, whoa, something just happened in this scene, and where I don't know what it was. And I really had to steel myself because I thought, whoa, this is interesting. I haven't felt this in many years. But I think the antidote for me is to try to destroy your own expectations. And like I said before, is, break the scene.
Yeah.
Ask your director's permission. If they already, you have an understanding with people, then just do a take where you're really going to go to some place wrong, maybe. And of course, if everyone's bat their head up against the wall and stop working, then, you do what any great actor does. You blame the writer.
Yeah, you just do the best you can and hope that
do the best you can. But sometimes you got to understand I've had many times where I thought that, oh God, that was just so off the mark. And it ended up not being. Our perception on reality, a lot of times, even in a conversation or an interview or whatever, you could feel like, well, geez, this just isn't working. Or you talk to someone and you just go, God, I felt really uncomfortable. They don't know what the is going on.
It's true.
And it doesn't matter. You might not feel it. And it's hubris to demand that things should be a certain way. You need to ride that wave. And if you have a scene and you're supposed to be breaking down and emotional and you feel like a dead corpse, well, guess what? Maybe that's what your character felt like at that time too. And then in it, but it could still affect the other people. Maybe, there's a reason for that.
Absolutely.
You got to be accepting of what happens from moment to moment.
Now, does all of that also apply to auditions? You've also said that you just hate auditioning, which of course has been said a lot on this podcast.
Yeah, who the person that enjoys auditions, I don't know, maybe might have a true sociopath in our midst, but no, some people are good at it. So, and people enjoy what they're good at, and I just would be a nervous wreck, sick with nerves, not excited with nerves, like on a roller coaster, but like sick. And I've also learned that the way that I work isn't conducive to auditions.
It sounds like it.
How do you audition, Paolo?
Right. How do you, 6 hours of prosthetics and...
And then with the dialect and the other, because you can't go in and just wing that dialect. You got to know it. It's got to be, you've got to convince yourself. And sometimes there's not time for that. But I do know that, you should never talk yourself out of auditions. Sometimes people are like, they get nervous and this, and they start talking. Don't do it. Do them all. Turn the job down after you get it.
Oh, that's great advice.
Yeah, just because we do that. Well, but geez, I don't know. This one there, and I don't want to play this role, and I shouldn't, and really you're just terrified or you're intimidated, but do them all. It's batting practice, and then say after the fact. Yeah,
that's actually really good advice. And I love this idea of you got to convince yourself. And in an audition, that's really hard to do.
It's really hard to do. And I mean, thankfully, some people saw past my, brutal auditions and, gave me opportunities and, but it's a hard one. My heart goes out to people, and I've been on the other side too, picking and choosing people for films and projects. It's heartbreaking for me because I just want to hire everybody.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, can't we give? Well, maybe we say no, but can't we give them another role? Can we write something for this person? And I'm just too soft.
Well, is there anything from those early career days? Is there anything you would change? Anything you wish you'd known or done differently?
Nah. Who cares? It's like, I guess the thing that I would say to my younger self is just, to take a deep breath and to not worry so much. I think so many of us as actors, it can be such a brutal career. And, it's really it's a fucking ass kicker, and it's easy to see the peaks, but there are a lot of valleys for all of us, a lot of valleys. And, I had many a dark days wondering if I would ever be able to work as an actor in the way that I dreamed of. And whenever I meet an actor, I always have, that connection, because I know we all walk through the shadow of the valley of death, or whatever the line, whatever that line is. But we all walk that precarious path.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting you say this thing about peaks and valleys, because I almost feel like the point of this podcast is we're only talking to people on the peaks. We're not necessarily interviewing somebody who's going through the biggest dry spell of their career and asking about what it's like there.
Yeah, but there's a lot, there are a lot. And it happens. And, I took 6 years off before Dallas Buyers Club, and I was making music and touring, but, I was actually retired. I didn't really have any plans to come back to acting. But it is a very competitive, it's a very challenging profession and craft. And a lot of times you're at war with yourself as well. And, your perceived abilities, your confidence, or, it's it's a wild one, but a rewarding one as well.
And it rewards you more over time, again, with that life experience. It's like part of perseverance is just hanging on and knowing that you're going to be able to incorporate everything that, especially for acting, it can be a late in life craft.
That's a beautiful thing about it. I mean, really, you can do gorgeous work, and we could list 1,000 actors that have done such masterful, beautiful work, late in their life.
Yeah.
And you get richer, your voice gets richer, your face gets richer, you have stories to tell. And I love watching older actors. I mean, it's a joy for me. I mean, I really admire that.
Absolutely. I also think it's just a really difficult thing to be able to articulate and talk about. It's a very mysterious craft, and thank you for just you're doing a great job of shedding light on it, and not in a way that's reducing it, I think, which is really tricky.
I appreciate it.
Can I ask you last couple kind of nerdy actorly questions?
Yep.
One is about superhero acting. Is there a key to superhero acting? Do you think of it differently, the Joker or Morbius, as opposed to another role?
Nah, it's all the same.
All the same. Okay.
I mean, some people are the superhero they're playing, and that's always interesting too.
Oh, what do you mean?
I just mean they're something about their persona. It's almost like they're hired because of what they exhibit and their personalities, and that's really fascinating too.
Wow. So is that something you think about, almost star power?
Well, no, because I love movie stars, as that's what I call them.
Yeah.
I love movie stars, and classic movie stars where you really I don't need those people to go and work on character. I love them and there's a ton of them that we all love. We love to watch them do what they do, and they do so well. I'd put George Clooney can do both. Some people do them both so well, but there's some personalities out there that are just so compelling that you're just love to spend time with those people, and then sometimes people can flip it, like Jack Nicholson. You just love when he's Jack, but he can also do anything. He does a little bit of both. Anyway, I love actors, and I love acting, and I love all kinds of different acting. Peter Sellers is a big inspiration for me. And of course, Daniel Day-Lewis and Denzel Washington, Al Pacino. I just adore actors.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you for your favorites. I also wanted to ask, is there something you've seen recently maybe, or just a performance that you think actors should see and study?
Yeah. I mean, I would say you should watch, what's funny? I gotta say, I wasn't going to say this, but it kind of jumped out at me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Adam Driver in The Last Duel was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
It was like he was on fire in that. But what I was going to say is watch Peter Sellers in Being There. That's a gorgeous performance. Yeah. And another performance that people haven't really seen a lot is Christopher Walken in Heaven's Gate, which is a film a lot of people haven't seen. It was a big disaster on the time of its release. It was a big commercial failure, but it's quite a beautiful film, and he's incredible in it. I love Robert Redford and Jeremiah Johnson. Kind of an overlooked performance, I feel like. But I love movies. I can recommend 100,000 movies. Because I'm a bit obsessed with movies and acting for much of my life.
Which is another good ingredient to have as an actor, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's always great to find an actor and then to watch everything they've ever done. And there's so many great actors to do that with, whether it's Anthony Hopkins or Denzel is a great actor to watch because he's always good. He's never, even if a movie doesn't work, he's never not been great in a movie.
Yep.
So those are the people I look to that have careers, not moments, but careers that is inspiring for me.
Totally. Gosh, thank you so much, Jared. This is so enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it.
In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Grouse Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Thanks as always to our producer extraordinaire, Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Kasey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. That's right, 100% free. For more exclusive content, join us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who would you like us to interview next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another glimpse in the envelope.